Hello, I hope everyone is doing well. I've got quite a few interesting points I want to speak about in this video. In the last video, I outlined a couple of the heresies in the local church, including the local church version of the Trinity and the local church version of purgatory. I also talked about the student conferences and what you can expect to see in the meetings at these conferences. And I also discussed a little bit about how the Lord's Recovery will grab a lot of time from the student, and it will likely get to the stage where the cult will literally take over the student's life. And I'm going to discuss this in more detail in this video, and I will discuss a couple of other points which could be interesting to the viewers. Okay, so now we are at the stage in these videos where the student has become a heavily involved member of this cult. And once it gets to this stage, it is very likely that the student will receive some kind of persecution from somewhere. In fact, it is very likely that this will happen. And the campus worker will know this. They will know this very well. So they will start preparing the student for this. Because actually keeping the student in the Lord's Recovery can often be even more difficult than actually getting the student, often can be more difficult than recruiting the student to begin with. Okay, so what happened to me was I was at the campus worker's house one day, and he just told me straight up, he just said, "You are going to be persecuted for being in the church." I was a little bit startled. I said, nah, I should be fine. But he said, no, you will be persecuted, trust me. So he planted that initial seed in my mind. Next thing you know, a few weeks later, I was at a family's house having dinner, and I started to tell the family a little bit about the group that I was in. And out of nowhere, the mother said, "Isn't that the Lord's Recovery? That's a cult, isn't it?" And yeah, I was a little bit startled, but I quickly remembered what the campus worker had told me about the persecution. And not long after that, a number of family members started to become concerned about me and this group that I was spending so much time with. Both of my parents told me that this group is bad. They're following Witness Lee. And at that time, I'd been in the group for probably about 18 months. I hadn't really heard that much about Witness Lee. The campus worker, he had given me a couple of his books to read, a couple of Witness Lee books to read, and I'd heard the name Brother Lee thrown around a few times in the meetings. But I honestly did not know an awful lot about Witness Lee, even though, again, I'd been in the group for at least 18 months. So I searched up Witness Lee on the internet, and within a couple of minutes, alarm bells were ringing in my head. Something looked a bit fishy about this guy. And yeah, I told myself, I said, "Oh, don't tell me you've been in a cult this whole time." Yeah, I wasn't very happy with myself. But I quickly remembered all the love that this group had shown me, how kind they had been to me, and the many companions and friends that I had made in this group. And that's actually why I talk a lot about their love bombing and deceptive tactics, because that is exactly how they duped me into this cult, and it also played a very big role in keeping me in this cult for so long. So I went back to the campus worker and I told him everything that had happened. And he told me, don't worry, he said, don't worry, the church has been persecuted for hundreds and hundreds of years. even way back to the times of the first century Christians, and even back to Jesus, who was crucified. And Witness Lee said himself, he said, just to plant that seed in his followers to get them to stay in his group, he said, when you are attacked and are undergoing persecution, do not be discouraged, for that is a strong sign that you are on the right track and that you have not been distracted from following the Lord's steps. Okay, so this is really important. I would just like to send a message to the local church cult. You guys are not being persecuted for supposedly following Jesus. It has nothing to do with Jesus. You guys are being persecuted for following an arrogant, proud, hypocritical, evil man who made many blasphemies against the Holy Bible and who, in my opinion, is an absolute insult to the Christian faith. And that's why you're being persecuted or rebuked. Witness Lee is the reason why you guys are being persecuted. And also the fact that most of your persecution has come from other Christians is a big red flag in itself. Also, during this period, I was given the We Were Wrong article by Hank Hanegraaff. And the local church absolutely love this article because it is one of the only articles on the planet from someone outside of the local church that actually supports this group as being a legitimate Christian group. So they absolutely love this article. And this article is probably about 60 pages long, and it is divided into 5 main sections. The first section talks about how the local church became a controversial group. The second section talked about Witness Lee's version of the Trinity. The third section talked about Witness Lee's God-man concept. The fourth section talks about Witness Lee's severe criticism of mainstream Christian churches. In the fifth section, the last section, talks about all the local church lawsuits that have occurred over the many years. Yeah, so after reading this article, I was pretty much fully convinced that this group was okay. So I stayed. So, over a period of time, my relationship with my parents deteriorated very badly. My parents were very worried about me, and more importantly, about my Christian faith. And that sparked a lot of controversy and a lot of arguments in the household. So in the end, I had enough. I ended up moving out of my parents' house, and I went to live in the local church corporate living, who I considered at that stage to be my real family. And I got to commend my parents for the love that they showed me during this period. They never gave up on me, even though I was being very arrogant and very rude towards them. They continued to love me, and they continued to pray for me, and they always keep that line of communication open to me. And, the sad thing is, a lot of people in this cult end up losing their parents, end up losing their non-local church parents for this cult. In other words, they abandoned their parents to pursue this wicked cult. Yeah, you see this all the time in this cult. And this cult actually supports people doing this. They would say something like, do whatever you need to do for the sake of the Lord's move. And this, of course, is an extreme isolation tactic. Yeah, for me personally, I honestly thought that the only way I'm going to be able to stay in any genuine relationship with my parents is by getting them to join the local church group. But yeah, that was going to be a difficult task. So I asked the campus worker what to do. He just said, "Yeah, let's just start by inviting them to a dinner." And thankfully, my parents were wise enough to decline. And this cult also tried to get my cousins and my extended family to join this cult. But again, thankfully, the same result. They declined too. Yeah, we also tried to get a few of my friends to join this cult. But again, most of them declined too. So yeah, during this stage, the local church weren't very happy with me because I wasn't gaining many people for their cult. So yeah, for me, I started to become very isolated from the outside world, and it got worse and worse and worse during my time in the corporate living. And I'm going to talk about this in a future video. Also, just before I went to the corporate living, people were starting to encourage me to consider attending the full-time training. And again, I'm sure a lot of you know what this is. It is pretty much a Witness Lee book seminar school, which goes for 2 whole years. At the school, they will study the books from Witness Lee, all the doctrines from Witness Lee's Bible. They will learn how to live and operate according to Witness Lee's regulations, and they will also learn how to pray Witness Lee style. So yeah, I was very, very lucky. Actually, I was very lucky that I never went to this school, because this is generally the final step in the student's brainwashing process. Once the Lord's Recovery student finishes their degree at their university, they will often attend this training. And once they finish this training, they will often become full-time serving people who go out, who serve on the university campuses for the Lord's Recovery. And they always have the ultimate goal of finding new members for the Lord's Recovery cult. And ultimately they want every new prospective student they come into contact with, they want them to go to the full-time training. So yeah, it's very much like a cycle that just keeps going round and round and round. And you know, the only way we can slow down this cycle is by warning as many students as we can. And I hope I'm doing a good job with this. Lastly, I just want to introduce the mind control in this cult and what you can expect to see. I saw a lot of this, particularly in the corporate living. And I'm going to speak a lot more about this in my future videos. But as a lot of you know, this cult heavily disregards questioning Witness Lee's ministry. Because remember, Witness Lee is the oracle of God speaking. So therefore, there's no way he can be incorrect when it comes to the Word of God. The Lord's Recovery have written an article on a website called shepherding.org, where they attempt to defend their leader. And the name of this article is called Questions vs. Questioning. If you want to ask a question to find out something about Witness Lee's ministry, that's fine. But if you want to question Witness Lee's ministry, in other words, is Witness Lee right or wrong, that's not allowed, because that will cause strife and evil suspicions. So just like the Apostle Paul told Titus to avoid foolish questionings in Titus chapter 3, Witness Lee is telling his followers to do the same. But unlike the Apostle Paul, Witness Lee twists the Bible to brainwash his followers into a fully submissive state. And again, I saw a lot of this when I was in the cult. Now I'm going to talk about this in probably my next video. Oh, and actually, I just want to say, after my last video was posted, I had a lot of local church members randomly turning up to my house uninvited. So yeah, I just want to say, please contact me before showing up. I will try to get my email put down below, so please contact me if you desperately want to talk to me. But honestly, no more random people turning up to my house, otherwise I might have to take it a step further. So overall, thank you so much for watching and God bless.